Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 9 of the Future Ready Librarians podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and serve as the Future Ready Librarians leader. I have the pleasure of working within my library and school community and also with others around the country and world through the Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I am honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. Well, today for our very last podcast of Season 9, I am really excited because I am going to invite my friends, Jenn and Rebeca from All for Ed, to our show. And when I was talking to them recently, I was very happy to hear that they are actually going to start their own podcast. I'm going to let them tell you the title and all the things. And so we thought this would be just a wonderful time to get together for them to share the news of their podcast, but also to talk about All for Ed and some of the things that are going on currently. So I couldn't be more happy to just end Season 9 with this conversation and to invite you to our show. So thank you for coming today.
Thanks, Shannon. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of our favorite podcasts ever.
I'm so happy. That's good to hear. Well, let's start by having the two of you introduce yourselves.
I can go first. I'm Rebeca Shackleford. I am the Director of Federal Government Relations at All for Ed. So I get the privilege and fun job of getting to work with our federal government. So I spend a lot of time with Congress and with whatever administration that we have. Before coming to All for Ed, I was a teacher and a school principal. So while I haven't gotten the joy of getting to work in the library, I've been really honored to work with a lot of awesome librarians.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm Jenn Ellis. I'm our Director of State Government Relations. So I work with all of the state governments that we engage with, our state policymakers, state legislators, including state policy and advocacy organizations, and on occasion, local governments as well. So any of the state or local level work that All for Ed does, I'm probably somewhere in the mix on those projects. Yeah.
Oh, what fun jobs. I love that. I always love hearing more about like just digging in a little bit to All for Ed, because in our podcast, of course, we're talking about librarians and future ready, but there are so many amazing things that All for Ed does and supports, and how they can even support, not only us as librarians, but our entire school and even what's happening within our community, but also our states. And so I'm happy to have you guys on too, just to talk more about that. Let's talk about your podcast, right?
Our podcast is called Can We Get a Minute? And I'll let Jenn tell us a little bit about the very cool idea that she had.
So one of the premises of our podcast, both Rebeca and myself and our teams, we're not the only people on our policy team here at All for Ed. We get to do a lot of really incredible in-depth policy work. We get to do some really wonky policy work, which we love, but it's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's totally fine. But one of the things that we've realized as we've been out in the field, we have a lot of educators, librarians, people who are in schools every day, and they have a lot of incredible policy ideas. They have a lot of incredible insight. It's not always connecting to policymakers. And one of the things that we realized is they also have a lot of policy questions. Our education landscape is very, very complex. So oftentimes it's not clear how something actually got into your school building. Like, who made the decision? Is it your school board? Is it your principal? Is it the president of the United States? How did something actually get there? And so one of the things that All for Ed, we always say in our mission is we're classroom to Congress. We want to create a connection through that whole spectrum. And we can talk a little bit more about what that looks like in all of our work. But the idea of this podcast is actually taking questions from educators about things that are going on in school buildings, like in real time, and then trying to trace back why that's happening from a policy standpoint. And our hope is to untangle that a little bit so that educators understand, where is this decision being made? Because honestly, if you don't know where the decision's being made, you can't advocate for change. So we want to help people understand, what is the lever that needs to be pulled if this were going to be different? Like, what do you have to do? Is this something where you have to call your senator? Do you have to just go speak at your school board meeting? Is this something where you can set up a meeting with your principal? And so that's what we're seeking to do, is just take questions from educators about things that they see in their classrooms, the type of questions that we get when we're out and about, and answer them for everybody and have some real conversations. Like I said, we want this to be very conversational. We want it to be fun to listen to. Like I said, Rebecca and I can walk out all day. We love it. We're not going to do that with you on the podcast. We're going to keep it. We're going to keep it for everybody. But that is the idea behind the podcast. And so, yeah, we're really excited. We're going to be launching in 2025. And, we would welcome, we have some questions to start with, but if we have librarians, if we have classroom teachers listening right now, if you have questions or ideas, and we'll give you an email you can send them to, we'd love you to send them our way. And we'll see if we can get them up on an episode.
I love that. And I think that when I first heard you guys talking about this, I thought about, just even within my own school and some of those questions that we have. And especially as librarians, we have a lot of questions around, it's not only books, but it's displays. I've had lots of questions about that. It's, things like, even book fairs. I've had questions about that this year, like all kinds of things about, I think, the whys and the hows. And as, we sit in our libraries, but also we think about the bigger picture, and even working and having conversations with our administrators and our families and our teachers. This is going to be so helpful, because I think kind of, going behind the curtains and getting some of those things that you can help us with are so great. And also just learning more about what you do for All for Ed and how you're supporting everybody, I think is going to be very meaningful to people too. I have to ask too, what light can you shine on what's happening now, the current climate in education? I'm sure that listeners too, if they're hearing that, what your roles are, and also that we are, talking about your new podcast. I would love to hear a little more about that too.
Listen, so, I think a lot of us in the last week have been like, oh, something is changing, because something is changing. In January, we'll have a new president, and things might shift. We don't really know what that's going to look like. But the reality is that I think our librarians have known that we've been almost like going to battle a lot in a lot of school districts, protecting like amazing books, being able to have displays that represent our communities and things like that. Like, this is not something new. So while I know a lot of people are really excited and a lot of people are really scared, we don't really know what the future holds, but we do know that our librarians have been at the front lines for a long time. And, we, I think, are pretty hopeful people. If we weren't, we wouldn't be able to do our jobs. And I think that there's, a lot of opportunity for advocacy. And, the federal government just gets to say, here's some money, here's the foundation, you're allowed to do A, B, and C. But what happens in your school building and what happens in your classrooms and in your libraries is really dependent on the people there. So there's so much power that folks have that they can leverage in that space, talking to their school boards, talking to their mayors, looking at their budgets, seeing where money is going, at the district level, at the city level, things like that. So, I don't know, John, if you have more to share.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I'll say, from my perspective, because I work a lot on like state level work, and I'll say one thing that I like to remind people, not just in this political moment, but in kind of all of our political moments, is, the United States of America is a very, um, politically, we have a very unique setup and sometimes very frustrating setup. It's very complex, it's very deep, and particularly when we talk about education, not every topic is this way. Sometimes there are some policies like some of our librarians may or may not believe it, but there are some things where there's a one federal official who can like wave a wand and do something. That obviously is not the case in education. Power is shared in a very complex web, all the way down into school buildings, all the way up to the president of the United States. And I think sometimes this system can feel very frustrating for us because we're wanting something to change positively, and it's like it's such incremental change, and we're like, let's go already, like everybody wants this, and that's like the frustration of our system sometimes being so complex. But I think one of the reasons that our system was built to be so complex, whether that is a good or bad on any given day, is that it also slows down things from being like too able to like whiplash. And so, a lot of times there'll be things being talked about rhetorically, like people will be saying, like, we're going to do like this big thing. And maybe you want that big thing, and maybe you're like, I hate that big thing. But whatever that big thing is, you have to understand in education, there is no one person who can go like on day one, like, we're doing the big thing. Like thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of people are involved in rolling that out over a very long period of time. And in while that is happening, there are many, many, many advocacy points where things can be lessened, made greater, slowed down, sped up. And when we talk about the education system, and I see this a lot working on the state level and like getting to be out in these very, very different systems in very different states, meeting people who are advocating in these spaces. Um, the education system, it's not like there's like a big machine that we're all working on, right? The education system is you who are listening. It's our educators and our librarians and our school and district leaders. Like, we are actually the system. And so, there's so much impact our educators can have. And so that's what I want people to remember. And that's not to lessen any feelings anyone's having. I think all that is completely valid. But I just want people to remember in any moment where there's big change proposed that like the big change takes time. And particularly working on the state, this is just so like at the forefront to me, because every day, part of the work I do is looking at policies we already like or are already enacted around the country. Sometimes they're already enacted in the federal government, and I'm trying to get states to do them. And so like I just see that every day. And so like I said, there's like two sides to that coin, right? But I think that is something that I'd like to talk about. And I think Rebecca is absolutely correct. In many ways, our librarians know this better than most, right? Because they are on the front lines of so many of the things that are happening right now in education. And so, you know, the thing that I would say is what we really need right now is for more people to join all of you in the fight so you're not there alone. And that is something that we really want to do with our podcast. And All for Ed is committed to doing with all of our policy work, is making sure that you're not out there alone. And so if that's how you're feeling, I just want to also acknowledge that and say we are aware and we are with you and we are going to work on that. But yeah, just take it from someone who works in the states every day. Like there's going to be lots of opportunities for us to do work, and there's going to be a lot of work to do. But yeah, we're going to do it together.
Well, we're grateful for All for Ed and the two of you. And I think that our listeners too, a lot of times people will ask, just even what they can do. And if you can leave like our listeners with just a little, thought or tip or hope of what we can do on a day-to-day basis, what would it be?
Well, I will share that when I was in middle school, the library was my safe space. I ate lunch there every day. Like my school was great. I loved it, but I just really needed, I'm an introverted person. I needed a little space to have quiet and to be alone, to recharge for the rest of the day. And my school librarians were like the light every day, they were the ones who smiled and welcomed me and didn't really like pay attention when I had a sandwich in the back of the room or something like that. And I'm so thankful today in my 30s, like so thankful for them. So I think just showing up every day is like such an act of resistance sometimes, and being there for the young people in your buildings. And I will say that I would love to see librarians running for office. There's so much power there, and it could, any office. I don't care what it is. Like, I don't know what a comptroller does, but run for that.
I love it.
Yeah, I would say, there's so much impact that our librarians, our classroom educators have like every single day, right? Like every single day in their buildings. And I remember in a previous job getting to see a new school building being opened up. And I remember going in when construction was over, but nothing was on the shelves into the library space. And it just looked like a wreck. I was like, there's no way this is going to come together. It was like, and the shelves were up and nothing made sense. And I remember I went in right before school opened. And it was like a fantasy winter wonderland theme. There are amazing book displays. I was like, with a card of construction paper? Like how, like, I mean, truly like, our librarians are putting in that work every single, that's somebody's time and the work of their hands. Nobody else is coming in there, right? That's just somebody's time, often unpaid before the school year starts, putting that together. And so, I remember when those kids came up the first day in that building, there was somebody who was like, we go to school in a castle. And so I just want, there's so much impact, there's so much power that our librarians and our educators have. And so what we want to help people do is just understand exactly where best to expend their energy, because I know that energy is going into the important work you're doing every day. And I think there are lots of ways to be involved. That, like I said, the important thing to me is that you don't waste your time. So if there's a decision point that's like at your school board, I want you to know what it is. I want you to know how to prepare to be heard there. If the decision point is not at your school board, if it's higher, I don't want you to waste your time going like I want you to go where it's impactful, because your time is valuable, in many ways more valuable than my time, which is why also we're out there doing advocacy so that your time is saved, because your time is the important time, frankly. I mean, it's true. So I think that's what I want people to know. And like I said, I think it can be hard sometimes when we talk about advocacy, because many of you are already doing so much on a day to day. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to do another thing now. Like, so I hear that. I think one of the things that we are very committed to right now is, like I said, we're going to do this together. And part of our work is we're going to get other people to come help do some of this work so it's not on your shoulders. And so, you know, we want to find the best ways for you to use your time to be the most impactful. But just know, showing up every day to do your job is a political act.
Mm.
To do your job well, to bring up the next generation, to create the amazing things that you create. Uh, you're in a classroom, you're in a library right now with future doctors and potentially the future president. One of you out there, say hi for me. But that is more than I will do today, or any of us who work in policy. So I just want to also just reinforce, if all you can do, if you say all I have the capacity for this year is to show up every day for these students in this building, not only have you done enough, you have exceeded what many of us will do. And so I just want to reinforce that as well. We want to give you the information you want, but I also just want to be aware that, you are already doing incredible work. I just want to make sure that is said and stated and very, very clear.
I love that. And isn't that true? Like when I visit librarians and I hear the little things that can be from something like they attended a board meeting or they had a parent meeting to finding the perfect book for a student. And days like that, honestly, are some of my favorite days because you've made a difference. And just like Rebecca said, the difference that we make when, we go in and even just smile at kids, it's like that makes a difference too. So I love what you guys said, and we appreciate everything. And thank you for loving librarians and libraries and all you do for education because you're making a huge difference too. So thank you so much. And I want you to tell people where they could reach out if they have a question for Can We Get a Minute?
Yeah, so we have our Alfred email. It's hello@alfred.org. Feel free to send us an email there. We'll do our best to answer it either on an episode or if, we have a couple minutes, we might even be able to send y'all an email.
Thank you so much. You're amazing. And thank you for all the work that you do and keep making a difference.
Thank you for having us on.
As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarians podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett Content. You make a difference in our libraries, schools, and within our lives, and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and put it to use within your practice as a future-ready librarian. If I can support you in any way, please feel free to reach out to me on X or Instagram at Shannon M. Miller or to my email at shannonmcclintockmiller@gmail.com. I am always happy to help. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.